this is Aaron Maurer. Here we are with another phenomenal learning opportunity for those of you in the Learning to Put Out Fires and Online Teaching PD course that we've been running. And this is one that I'm super stoked about, because I think as we're already at the time of this recording, we're a week in. We've got other teachers and schools trying to figure out some of these things, and for most people in Iowa where we are, we're 4 or 5 weeks into teaching already. So we're not to the point of let's spend all summer reflecting on how we're going to do it. We're now to a place where we're going, we actually we have to, there is no choice. And so lots of you are trying to figure out how to save your sanity, how to save your time, how to be more organized for yourself as well as for your students. And the guest for this show today is phenomenal. He's doing work not just here and there, but across the state of Washington and other places. And so really excited for Jeff to join us and to share some of those insights to help you kind of organize some of your thinking, kind of streamline some of your processes so you feel more effective as an educator, with the end product of obviously students enhancing and learning. So I'm already getting ahead of myself. Jeff, let's take a step back. I'm already excited. But let's go ahead and just have you introduce yourself for those that don't know you. I'm sure many watching you know you, but let's go ahead and who are you and what do you do?
Awesome. So my name is Jeff Utecht. I'm an independent consultant, educator, speaker, the whole 9 yards, as most of us are these days. But it's been an incredible ride. I'm here in Seattle, which is part of the story of how all this happens. And just a quick background on even, how I ended up being in a situation that unfolded last spring. And it has completely, it's been awesome, just an awesome ride here in the state of Washington. But really the background of this is this is the 4th time I've been in emergency distance learning. And I don't know very many other people that can say that. My wife and I taught internationally. And our first international post was in Saudi Arabia in 2002. And due to terrorism in that country, we actually went into emergency distance learning for about the last 2 months. We had to graduate high school kids I want you to think about this. It's like 2003. So we're talking, we have flip phones.
I'll say that's flip phone era, isn't it?
Yeah. Flip phone, 56K dial-up modem, and Moodle. Do you remember Moodle? We still use Moodle, right?
Who remembers Moodle? It's still around. It's still around.
I know. And we graduated kids. That's the crazy part. We did it. And then my wife and I moved to Shanghai, and we're teaching at Shanghai American School. And due to SARS breaks out when we get to Shanghai. We ramp up, again, using Moodle. We ramp up, and this is 2006. We ramp up. We get ready to close. We thought the Chinese government was going to make us close. We ended up not closing, but we were ready. We were training teachers on doing videos and the whole 9 yards. This is 2006. So still no iPhone. Right. The iPod is out. So we were doing podcasting because the iPod was all the rage, right? And podcasting was huge. But we ended up not closing then. My wife and I then moved to Bangkok, and then H1N1, political unrest, and the worst flooding ever in downtown Bangkok happened. And we go virtual for about a month and a half. This is 2009. So now we've got iPhones. We're already a 1-to-1 school. Every kid had a MacBook, 4th through 12th grade. So we were 1-to-1. Every kid had a public facing blog. So we had a place for kids to publish their information. An incredible journey, right? And we were able to do it for just over a month. We were closed. Then because of that, in 2011, I was actually invited to the State Department in Washington, D.C., and I worked with senators and the State Department to create a virtual school for international schools, because there were things happening, political unrest and stuff, and these international schools needed, and we're talking American kids, right? They're American kids living all over the place. And these international schools were closed, but we still needed to get the kids their learning. And so we created, working with the State Department, we created a virtual school system that any international school could plug into the moment they needed to. And very exciting that part of that was used during this whole thing, especially in Asia. The other thing that's allowed is we have to remember that Asia, and especially I'm talking American international schools, Common Core, American international schools, were shut down from January. And very few districts actually reached out to their partners overseas and said, what's working and what's not. They were 4 months. They had stuff figured out that we thought we were the first to do it, and we weren't. Right. And luckily enough, I know a lot of people that work out there. I was working with the International School of Luxembourg when we shut down here in the States. So I was out there supporting in Europe when things hit Europe. But of course, this is the crazy part. I live in Seattle, and where's the outbreak in US? In Seattle. So the moral of the story is wherever Jeff lives,
I was
move far,
say,
far away.
I see a
Right?
common
Yeah,
thread
you see a
throughout.
common thread here.
Yeah,
The common
yeah.
thread
So
is
I'm
me. So
staying
move away.
away from you. Whenever I see that
So
you're moving, I'm
yeah,
not going
yeah,
there.
don't live wherever I live. I bring this stuff on me. But long story short, the state reaches out to me in April and says, "Can you support?" And we created some trainings, and to this, as of right now, to the best of my ability, I've lost count, but it's over 10,000 educators across the state, supporting over 177 school districts, and we are moving the state, and it's been so fun. When you get that kind of momentum, and our whole idea was, we call it reimagine Washington Ed, and we can say reimagine Iowa Ed, right? Like,
Right.
it doesn't matter. Like, we have an opportunity. We have to understand that the system wasn't right. And I think this is where we have to begin. It wasn't a perfect system before we closed down. It wasn't working for every single kid. We actually had stories, and I don't know if you do, but we had stories of some kids who actually graduated because of the pandemic.
Mm.
These are kids who weren't showing up to regular school, all of a sudden had access and fulfilled their graduation requirements. So as we move into the new school year, we have to remember we have an entirely new skill set that is supporting some kids. And we have the school that was working for most of our kids. How do we bring those together and make school better for everyone? And to me, right now, as we start the school year, really needs to be our focus, right?
Yeah.
How do we take the best of what we learned and move that forward to support us all?
And I love that. I mean, this is why I'm so excited to have you on the show, because for me to create some PD or to create some training and even try to pretend to educators that I know the answers when I have zero background in it. Yeah, I do some online stuff, but nothing is in comparison to what we're facing in our realities where we are. And I think you hit on a couple of key things I want to highlight and then gain your thoughts from that. Like, one, while it's new for many of us, like, there are people who have been doing this for quite some time. And I'm not saying that in a way like, where have you been? That's not the point. But to realize that there are stories, there are people, there are schools, there are states and countries that can help you jumpstart that. And I think hopefully now we're starting to realize, like, let's start to reach out. And it's amazing someone like you that has those connections, and now you're working with people to kind of continue to build that bridge, which I think is really powerful. And you hit on another key thing, and you're like the third person now, the people we've been doing these sessions that have brought this up, that while it's stressful, while there's a lot on our plate, and yes, we have to be careful of burnout, this is a great opportunity to really see things that need to improve. I look at a lot of this as, for all of us, myself included, even in what I do, is a lot of us got sucker punched. We kind of knew some things we knew to get better at, but we were able to kind of just move through it, kind of put a Band-Aid on it, and now all of a sudden, man, we just got a knockout punch. And the things that we could convince ourselves was working in face-to-face, we're finding out in hybrid and online just flat out don't work. And now what do we do? And it's not to say you were bad or you were wrong. It's, here's a great opportunity now to strengthen those areas.
And I think
go
what
ahead.
we were already feeling this. There was this pressure that we were feeling in education. And I think part of it, like, one of the things I keep saying is, this is our disruption. Like, a lot of school, like your entire state, like, we were going one-to-one, we're talking about using computers with kids, using technology, but we were stuck in a system that wasn't able to really utilize that to the best of its ability. And it was nobody's fault. We just, and this is what I told our state legislators, like, we leapfrogged about 10 years. Like, we were already headed here.
Yeah.
We just know that education moves slow, right? And what this did is, this is our disruption. Like, the internet has disrupted so many industries. This was our disruption. All of a sudden, the internet is here. You have to do it. And so you have to learn to pivot. And when you learn to pivot, the thing that I've been talking about, especially with teachers, is we need to get to a different mindset. And our mindset right now, I love using that. I've been using a quote by the late Congressman John Lewis, right? And when he was fighting for civil rights in this country, his quote was, "We need to choose progress over perfection." Educators, that's our mindset right now. There's nothing perfect about this. There is nothing perfect about hybrid. There's no perfect way to do a Zoom meeting. There's no perfect way to do anything. But can we choose progress over perfection?
I love that.
Every day, we're going to learn a little something. We're going to take that. This is the largest action research project. If anybody's gotten their master's degree, this is the largest action research project ever undertaken by education. And you need to have this almost excitement of, oh my gosh, I tried that and it failed, but it was amazing. Look at everything I learned, right? And then we're going to try it again.
Yeah.
You have to get to a mindset. Like, and I keep telling teachers, like, we're eating humble pie right now. We're constantly going on with students about how you have to have a growth mindset. Guess who needs a growth mindset right now? Me.
Mm.
Because none of this is right. There's nothing perfect about it. So I'm
Yeah,
going to choose progress over perfection.
I
And
love
every day
that.
I'm going to try something a little different.
So as you say that quote, it fits perfect because I know some of the work you've been doing, and not some. I know it's been a lot of your work getting schools up to speed. Is you have this format, this structure, maybe the better word for it, of called your core four. And I know you have
Yeah.
a lot of resources, and people can really dive deep into this more if they're interested. But I think it's as you're talking about that quote from John Lewis, that progress over perfection. I think a lot of people now we're a month in, we're 5 to 6 weeks in, and I think we're finally giving ourselves the subtle pat on the back, going, okay, I don't have to be perfect because I don't have time for it. Even though I think that's where a lot of people were at the beginning,
Yep.
but they're swirling.
Yep.
And like you said, like, okay, so I'm gonna go try some things and see what happens. But I think we're grabbing all over because there's the pressure on social media. Every tech company has something free for you to use.
Of course.
I'm
Yes.
saying this is great, and this person over here is saying this is great, and we're all
Yep.
trying to help, but it becomes a huge soup of stuff. So
Absolutely.
could you kind of the 30-second elevator pitch, not that's
Yep.
not what it is, of the core four, because I think it's
Yeah.
really helpful for teachers to okay, let's just scale this back and let me start here before I start grabbing all over the place.
Yeah. And so I've shared with you, and you can share as listeners, you'll have access to this, but we actually have a worksheet we put together called the Core 4 worksheet. And the Core 4 are 4 tools that you must, and like all capital letters yelling at you, must have in place for if you're in a hybrid, if you're in full distance, and get this, when you're back ready to quote unquote regular school, the core 4 is going to have to be there, right? Like this core 4 is just part of what good teaching and learning looks like in 2020. And here are the 4 apps, right? There are 4 things you need. And these are the only 4 you start with. Now, you talked about you're a little bit farther into the school year than we are here in the state of Washington. We're in about week 3. Okay. You said you're week 4 or 5 or right there somewhere.
Yep.
So you're a couple weeks ahead of us. But this was our heavy lift as a state, was getting every district, and every district can be different, but you need to have a core 4. And those 4 apps are, you need to have a home base. Now, we call it a home base. This is also called your learning management system. I'm thinking Google Classroom, Schoology, Microsoft Teams, Canvas, Blackboard, those, right? But I like calling it a home base for kids because kids don't know what LMS means. A home base is a place where we start every meeting. Right? Everything starts in your home base. I never email kids a link. I never email kids anything. The only thing I email kids is go to your home base. Your work is right. We got it. That's it's like you go to class when the bell rings, right? You go to home base.
I like that.
So that's tool number 1. For a lot of teachers, your district has probably already chosen that tool.
Yes.
So that's your home base. That's where everything starts. All right. The second tool you need to have then is somewhere where your content is stored. If you're a Google district, that's called Google Drive. If you're a Microsoft district, that's called Office 1 or Office 365, right? Or OneDrive. So you need to have that. That's the core. Now, what we found when last spring and even into this fall, what we found is most districts had those 2 tools in place. The 2 tools that were missing were the other 2 that become essential. One is your synchronous tool, right? Where are you having your synchronous meetings? We're thinking Zoom, Google Meets, Microsoft Team meetings.
Right.
That's kind of the 3 right now. Zoom and Meets being the 2. Right. So you need to have one of those. And then the 4th one is, and this is the one that most people forget about, is your asynchronous video tool to make instructional videos. And educators, if you are listening this or watching this, that is your heavy lift. Yes. Our heavy lift, the skill we were missing as educators, was understanding the power of instructional videos to a generation who's been raised on media. And to understand that we as a society have already switched to learning through instructional videos. It's called YouTube. And every time I talk to teachers, I say, share a YouTube video that you watched where you learned something new. And I have not found anybody in the world who hasn't learned something new by watching a YouTube video. And we have to understand we have a generation who knows how to learn through YouTube. Our heavy lift, the one skill, if you're looking for one thing to focus on, educators, it's how to make great instructional videos. And you need to have a tool that allows you to do that. Now, if you're using Google tools, I like Screencastify.
Yep.
It's free. It only allows you, for the free version, you can only record more than 5 minutes. And research says that you want your videos to be less than 5 minutes. We can dig into the research if you want, right? It automatically saves to Google Classroom. Like, it's just a beautiful tool.
Yeah,
If you're a Microsoft district, I like Screencast-O-Matic. If the other app that I'm finding very popular is Loom, Loom, the Loom app. Now, you don't want all three. You need one. Pick one. Now, where this really works, that's your core four, right? Home base, content organizer, synchronous video, asynchronous instructional videos. Those are your four apps. It's the only four you should have. It's the only four you should be using through the month of October. Stop using everything else. Like, stop it. To your point, Aaron, there's Flipgrid. I love it. It's one of my top 3 schools. I'm going to use it, but not until October. Like, get the rest of it out. And the reason why we do this is it's not about you, teachers. It's about your kids and your families. Core 4 supports families and kids, because families and parents can't keep track of the 50 million different tools. There's Kahoots, and there's quizzes with 2 Z's and quizzes with 3 Z's. And there's all of these programs that parents don't want.
Yeah.
They're not to a place until your core 4 is totally solidified. You can't build a tower without a strong foundation, and you have to have a core 4 in place. My goal is as a school, you have a core 4, right? That as a district, if you can, as a district, have a core 4 that every teacher uses, you slow down the process and you support families at home, regardless if kids are in front of you or kids are at home. And the reason why we want to do that is because I need any 4th grader, because I was a 4th grade teacher, I need any 4th grader that if they are struggling with Google Classroom, to know they can call any other 4th grader and know that kid's using Google Classroom too. Or I'm struggling getting into my meets, I know I can reach out to any other kid in my district and they're using meets as well. If I'm a parent, I need to be able to know that if my kid's using Google Classroom, I can call any of my parent friends and they can help me. The problem is if we have too many tools, you break down the support at home, which we critically need in a hybrid or distance learning situation. So
I mean, as you're talking there, to interject, and one, as people watching this video, my neck's going to be sore. I've just been sitting here going, like it's my silent amen. And I think it's, as you're talking about that, going back to the core 4, and one of the things for people in this PD is, as we've begun to explore other tools, I want to make sure that something is really clear here as well, because what you're sharing, Jeff, is something that I think is utmost important. But even in this PD series, while we are exploring some other tools, the goal here is for you to be learning those on the back end, not to, we're spending, just so Jeff, some time looking at Flipgrid in the needs of like assessment and documentation. Yep. We're looking at Wakelet for collaboration and resource, and we're looking at Pear Deck for some engagement integration. But we're doing that in the lens of not learn it now and then use it tomorrow. It's learn it now, so when your kids are ready and you're ready, it's not another thing on top of the plate. You're kind of building that in the backdrop. So I just wanted to make sure that I build that bridge there, so people are going, well, Jeff's saying just the core 4, but in this PD we're looking, no, it's designed to also sprinkle the seeds, so when you're ready for that next step, you're ready to rock and roll.
And right now we need to be focused on creating habits. And those habits are like I love everything you mentioned. I love those apps. We're going to use those apps, right? And I love that your approach, right? Like, yes, you need to start learning these apps, what they can do, how you're going to set them up. Because at some point, you're going to want to use Flipgrid. But I first need to train students in knowing, how do I get to my Google Classroom? Where are all of the links to my resources? Before I ever worry about putting a link to the Flipgrid to create the video.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have that. And I think one of the things, and I'm hearing this, like I was just yesterday with about 3,000 teachers. And the number one thing I'm hearing from teachers right now is like, I'm spending a lot of time teaching kids the technology. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. You're going to have to slow it down. But here, let's remember this. When you start the school year, you do the same thing. You show kids, that's the basket over there where we turn in our papers. Over there is where you put your binder on the wall. This poster on the wall means this. We spend weeks building community, taking kids on a tour of our classroom. How many times in your traditional classroom did you still have to remind kids, the paper goes over there, the paper goes over there, the paper, like nothing's changed. You're
Yeah.
still going to be, for the first 5-6 weeks of school, still telling kids, the paper's over there, the paper's over there. They don't know how. We think kids know how to learn with technology. They don't. They know how to do Instagram. They know how to play Minecraft. They don't know how to learn with this, and we're going to have to teach them how to do that.
Yeah, there's new routines, and there's one of the things that I've been working on with through the AEA is some of the stuff of helping students understand like what the term student means. Like we have to redefine it, because to be a student now is very different. The goals are the same, but like I look at my own children, like my kids knew, like in 5 days of face-to-face, they understood the interaction. They understood how to raise a hand. They understood like when to speak, when not to speak. Now, whether they chose to, be apply it to the rules, but they understood the structures. And now here we are, whether you're hybrid or you're completely online. I think it's really easy to overlook because there's so much on our brain to go like, what does it look like for a kid to raise their hand in a call? What does it look like for a kid to raise their hand when we're not in a live session? Right. What does that look like for interaction? Is that, are we doing that, through text, and where does that go? Where are these places? And so then teaching those routines. And I think some teachers are still trying to figure out even for themselves what that is. But I think you hit on a very critical point that while we're trying to figure ourselves out what it means for educators, regardless of our role in education, we also have to spend time to explicitly teach that with students. Because I see now what's happening as I hear, emails or phone calls from teachers from all over in our areas, like the kids aren't engaged. They're not getting on the call. They're not, maybe they're not showing their video. Maybe they're not showing up. And we look at like, it's like, but what routines have you helped them build? Like, do they even know how to? Or are we just assuming, and I know some teachers, a lot of teachers have put those things in place, but but this is a good opportunity to stop and go, well, how did I actually even teach them? Or did I just say it goes here?
I think there's a couple things that we found, and we were talking about this like last spring, and like we here in the state of Washington, we shut down March 17th. Like it's a date I'll remember forever.
Right.
Every kid went virtual on March 17th. And one of the things we found last spring that we're still finding now is there was a hole. And the hole in the educational system that we found was we were doing a really good job of teaching kids how to follow direction. We were doing a really poor job of teaching kids how to learn. And what school does is school was teaching you how to follow directions. It's called a bell schedule. We tell you when to get on the bus, when to get off the bus. We tell you when to go to first period. We tell you when you can eat lunch, right? Kids get really good at following directions. All of a sudden, you're in a distance or hybrid where you're doing a lot of your learning without the boss standing in front of you. That's what this is.
Yeah.
How do you work when the boss isn't standing right in front of you? And our kids do not have the skills, nor did we teach them how to do work without the boss standing in front of you. So we are going to have to retrain how do you work when the boss isn't in front of you. And the reason why I keep saying the boss and not the teacher is because a recent survey came out at the end of July where they pooled leaders of companies from around the United States. 82% of them said that working from home will be permanent even after this is all over. 47% of those leaders said this is the way business will always be. 50%, that's almost 50% of businesses are not going back into office buildings. We have to train. It switched on us. It changed in the moment. We are now training a new kid. If our job in public education is to prepare kids for college, career, and life, colleges just did away with SAT as an entrance exam.
Yeah.
Career, you need to know how to work at home when the boss isn't standing in front of you. That's what we're preparing kids for now. And that's forever. Here in the state of Washington, one of our big ones is we have a company called REI. I don't know if you know REI. They make outdoor equipment.
Yep.
They built a brand new, beautiful campus. They were ready to move into it in May. They just sold it. They never moved into it. They sold it and said, we are ever for permanently working from home.
Yeah, and that's why I was just pulling up as you were talking. It reminded me of Pinterest. Just paid almost $90 million to break their lease on their building. Like, so I mean, just if you follow the headlines, everything you're saying, Jeff, like just watch what like these aren't like the local small shops here and there that have just been struggling for just a lot of reasons. These are the big companies that are going, I think like even Microsoft, a majority of those people, I think are just forever going to be remote. Like
Yep.
that remote work is there, I mean,
So
and
the
it's
so the
crazy.
question we have to ask ourselves as educators are, what are those skills that kids need to have to know how to work when the boss isn't standing right in front of you? Number one skill, and here's one that I found, this idea of time management. We
Yes.
talk a lot about time management. And I was the kid, if you remember in the 80s, we got the computer printout, dot matrix printer printout that
Heck
said
yeah.
needs to use time wisely in class. I don't remember anybody showing me how to use my time wisely. I was just told to use my time wisely. We need to stop telling kids and start showing kids. The number one thing that we have started doing across the state of Washington, we start every Zoom meeting having kids open up this incredible app on your phone. It's an amazing app. It comes free on every phone. It's called a calendar. And we are having kids calendar in when you were babysitting your younger brother and sister. Calendar in when you have a work schedule. Calendar in, calendar in. Okay, you got all your calendar? Awesome. I'm your ELA teacher. I need 3 hours from you this week, and I need them in 20-minute chunks, because research shows the best human, not a teenager, the best human can only focus for about 20 minutes at a time. So I need 3 hours from you this week, but I want you in 20-minute chunks. Put that into your calendar. And then the kid goes to math, and the math teacher says, open up your calendar. Do you got your babysitting duties in there? Or do you making sure your brother and sister got lunch? Because I know mom and dad are working, right? A lot of essential workers. Okay, awesome. I need 2 hours from you this week in 20-minute chunks. Put that in your calendar. And all of a sudden, the kids are like, well, I can't sleep until 10. You're right. You can't. You got to get up at 8. You
Yeah.
can't fit your time in, right? Or what we're finding here in the state is very fascinating. I don't know if you are finding this, but we are finding that we are having the most success with elementary kids early in the morning. Some are doing our synchronous meeting, our Zoom or Google Meets between 8 and 10 a.m. Our middle school kids between 10 and 12, and our high school kids between 1 and 3. We are seeing very little engagement from high school kids before noon. And it makes sense.
This could be a lot connected to the brain, right? I mean,
Yes.
I've read stuff. I'm not an expert on it, but it's all about
We have
like
had research.
circadian rhythms,
Yes.
and sleep patterns that are just the brain.
And
is
the
just,
research has been out forever. And all of a sudden you're learning distance learning. Of course you're going to sleep in. I mean, it's one of the reasons why people work from home.
Yeah.
Right? And high school kids are, and what we're seeing in this state, and I can only speak for our state. And again, we've got a lot of data, over 10,000 teachers, 177 districts. We are seeing the high school kids are doing work between 1 and 8 p.m.
Yeah,
we're seeing elementary kids do work
of my son right now. Yeah, I mean, he's I try to get him up to keep a routine, whether not at the butt crack of dawn, but and it takes him. It's usually right around like the lunchtime for him. And as you're talking, I'm just sitting there going, it's so true. Like this morning, right before this call, I was with my youngest, and I know with her, it's we got our checkpoints. It is the morning we hammer out the things that I know are going to be the one where she's going to need me the most. I can squeeze that time in to work around my work, and the other things where she'd be a little bit more independent. We can kind of move that to when she's ready, but that's usually later in the day when the energy, like, she's ready to be done. But so it's. I have anecdotal proof to your research.
Yeah.
Yes, I've got 3 children that are lining up.
And the other part of this that I think becomes really important that I want to make sure that we touch on is the use of those 2 videos, right? As part of our core 4, you have 2 different ways that we're going to use this. We have our synchronous Google Meets or Zoom, and we have our instructional videos, asynchronous videos. This is your Screencastify. This is your heavy lift. Here's what the research will show you. And I've been asking people to find me research that contradicts the only research I can find. The only research I can find shows that you should do no new content over a Zoom or Google Meet. Live teaching over Zoom or Google Meet does not actually lead to any growth. It leads to no learning. You can go look through Google Scholar. I'm constantly looking through Google Scholar. The most I can find is research done at university level shows very little growth in any learning over a synchronous meeting. And that is really interesting because university students have a whole other reason to show up. It's called money and you're paying for it, right? But there is no research that shows doing any new content over a Zoom meeting or Google Meet shows any growth in learning. That's number one. Number two, the research, and I'll share it with you so you can put the link in there.
Yeah, that'd
The
be great.
research that we've been using has come out of Vanderbilt, and it's been out since 2015. And I'll share it to you here so you can give it out to people. But the research from Vanderbilt shows that instructional videos work. This is also called YouTube, but we all know it. And the research that Vanderbilt University did in 2015 is built on research from others before them. The research is out there. This is forevermore. Our job as teachers is going to be creating instructional videos. They work incredibly from a distance, but they are even more powerful when kids are in front of you. And this is what we have to be thinking about. So we want our new content to be in instructional videos. And the research that I shared with you, please click on that link in the show notes.
Yeah.
It actually walks you through what needs to be in that video in order for learning to occur. There's a couple things. Number one, and you already know what they are because you all watch YouTube videos. Number one, must be less than 5 minutes. And the research shows if you need to be longer than 5 minutes, you break your video into smaller chunks.
Which is why Screencastify is good on the free account because it's automatically built in.
Exactly. Exactly. Right? And so if it's going to be longer than 5 minutes, we're going to break it into 2 or 3 to 4 minute videos. Right? That's number one. Number two, what we're telling teachers is your face has to be on the screen. Yes, the research will say you can go use Khan Academy and you will actually see growth in learning. But the research is overwhelming that if that teacher makes videos for that kid or that class, we see learning increase by twofold. It's incredible because what you've done when you create an instructional video is you have turned the pace of learning over to the learner. And Aaron, I want you to think about this. Like the best teachers among us, when you're ready to teach, what percentage of your kids are ready to learn? Like how many of us stood in front of the whiteboard saying, Billy, Susie, stop talking to Sally. I'm ready to teach. Are you like, I know you're not ready to, Billy, put down the pencil. You need, right? And we're ready to teach when kids aren't ready to learn. But when you make an instructional video, that student is ready to learn the moment they decide to hit play. They are saying, I'm ready to learn now. I'm going to hit play. And here's the other cool part. You make an instructional video, kids can watch you 10 times if they need to. And you know, those are the same kids that in your live classroom are not going to ask you to repeat yourself 10 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of a sudden we have individualized instruction for every kid. And this is why they work when kids are in front of you as well.
Yeah. Right? So Jeff, let me ask you this, I'm going to ask this question also knowing that this could probably end up being an entire workshop in itself. I'm prefacing that this is a big question. So you're sharing this stuff and it's phenomenal. I was watching a webinar on ISTE. I'll have to find it and share it too. And they're just talking about like general YouTube stats, and the average viewer will stay engaged with the video for like 2.5 minutes, even though we know 5 or 6 minutes is the threshold of what you should make. And so then I looked at my YouTube channel. I'm not a YouTube celebrity, but I do attract like hundreds of thousands of hours in a year. So I have enough where I think and I'm at 206. So I was like, all this stuff is lining up. But here's where my question to you is. So teachers are listening. They're going, oh my gosh, okay. I've kind of heard this. Now Jeff is hitting me with the research. You're working with 10,000 plus teachers. We know the video should be 5 minutes. We need to kind of chunk it down. I still think they wrap their head around that.
Yeah.
And they still don't know where to begin because they've never maybe had to think about their classroom that way. I know we talk about movements and shifts within a class period. And I know, like I said, that's a whole workshop. But what have you been finding, at least I'm thinking like beginner steps for people to frame their brain around it? As you've been working with teachers and hearing those stories, a teacher's listening, they're going, okay, Jeff, you've hooked me. I need to rethink my approach. I'm going to try it my next lesson. How do they start? What are some tips for them to think about?
Okay. So step number one, you're going to go install Screencastify into Chrome, or you're going to go download or use Screencast-O-Matic. Step one, like go find that. That's step one. Step two, you're going to pour yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. I call it cup of coffee PD, right?
I got
it's
it
cup
right
of coffee
there.
PD.
There it is.
You're going to pour yourself a cup of coffee of a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. You're going to go to this incredible website called YouTube, and you're going to search for Screencastify in the third grade classroom, Screencastify in the math classroom, whatever you teach, cup of coffee. And in one cup of coffee, you will understand how Screencastify works. That's step one. Step two, You're now going to make your instructional video. And there are 3 things that must be in your instructional video, right? And this is all based in the Vanderbilt research. You can go in and look at it. Number 1, we call them one-take videos. There is no editing allowed. Because what we find is when teachers start editing, they edit out all the mistakes. And it's the mistakes that make you you. When you're teaching in front of your class and you make a mistake, you just use your hand on the whiteboard and you just erase it and you just keep teaching. Same thing happens in your videos. Kids need to see your face. And if you make mistakes, you're going to keep going. Right? And you're going to be, and the reason why your face has to be on the screen is because we know that communication, 90% of it is facial expression. So your face has to be there for your kids on the screen, and Screencast-O-Matic, Screencastify, they both allow that to happen. Right? So your face on the screen, one take video, no editing allowed. Right? The key, those are key pieces. The third piece of that is once you start making your instructional video, you understand that just because kids are watching a 5-minute video, I want to chunk this down where kids are working along with me. And when the kids are working along with me, I can actually make a 5-minute video that has kids actually engaged in work for about 30 minutes. Because what I'm going to do in my instructional video, and here's exactly how I would do it, right? I would say, hi class, how are you today? Hey, today we're going to be doing math where we're going to be multiplying 2-digit numbers by 2-digit numbers. So what I need you to do is grab a pencil, grab a piece of paper, and grab a marker. I need you to go do that right now. So pause your video and go get your supplies. Awesome. Now you've got your supplies. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to write down the number 22. So write down the number 22 times the number 34. All right, pause the video until you've done that. And you are going to do this 5-minute video where you're actually going to tell kids to pause and work with you. So I'm going to be doing a 5-minute video, but I'm going to, just like I did there, I just pause for a second and then I go on. And it gives kids enough time to hit pause, do what the teacher tells them to do. So we are teaching kindergartners to read through instructional videos. We are teaching kids how to do math through instructional videos. Right? Those are your 3 things. Your face has to be on the screen. You're not allowed to edit. And you're going to tell kids to pause and do, just like you would if you were in front of the whiteboard in your school.
I love it, Jeff. It's so good. And I actually think, to be respectful of your time, I think that is the perfect challenge really to end this conversation on. Is we got 2 challenges through this conversation. One, Jeff has been kind enough to give us access to the Core 4 digital worksheet. It's a Google slide. You can go in and learn to identify, just go through and identify, do you have the Core 4 figured out? And do that for yourself as an educator, but then, use that as a conversation, maybe with your coaches or your admin teams of
absolutely.
How do we make this happen where maybe it's universal for our building, our district. Every local thing is different. So I'm not going to tell you how to do that. The ideal thing is just like you said, keep it universal for the parents and the kids and educators and just everyone that needs support. And challenge number 2, is, the YouTube coffee and then getting into doing your one take. And I think just practicing doing that's going to require for a lot of people vulnerability to do the one take. That is going to be a big deep breath for some people who that is really scary, and to just be okay with the mistakes. And I think as you're talking, just remembering that when we're in the classroom, we make mistakes all the time and we probably don't even notice that we do it, and so here's an opportunity. Not everybody likes to see themselves on video or audio, but all the research you're showing is we've got to make it work, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you get.
Yeah, and nobody likes to see themselves on video or audio, but too bad. This isn't about you, teachers. It's about your kids.
Yep. Absolutely.
And they had to look at you anyway and listen to you anyway. So get over yourself.
I love it. Jeff, this has been so great. You've got so much phenomenal work, and I'll definitely get the resources on the PD site and in the show notes for everyone to go and check out. But it's always good to ask, if people want to learn more about you, if this is the first time hearing about all the work you're doing, and they want to learn more, they want to dive in. I know you've got lots of things happening for people to get engaged and go deeper in your work and the stuff you're developing. Where can they go?
Yeah, so out of all of this, we ended up starting a website called Shifting Schools. So you can go to shiftingschools.com. I'd highly encourage you that if you go there, that you sign up for our newsletter. We are giving away free PDFs almost once a week. So we have a whole PDF around feedback frames to use during Zoom meetings. We have another free PDF around brain boosters. You can find all of those on our Twitter account, which is at Shifting Schools. If you go check our Twitter, they're all free PDFs and we're giving stuff away all the time. We also have our courses. We call them our Reimagine courses or our Shifting School courses. We're getting ready to start some. I don't know when this is going to go out, but on September 21st is our next round of trainings. We've already got about 600 teachers signed up here in the state of Washington to go through these again. Right now, we're calling them our 2.0 because our 1.0 training was like preschool starting, and we're into school. So now it's 2.0. We're talking about creating pathways that work, research-based pathways that work. We're talking about creating waypoints and wayfinding. We touch on assessment. We touch on feedback. We talk about how do you grade from a distance. All of that is in these trainings. And we meet once a week over Zoom, and then you have access to these asynchronous modules that you get to work through on your own as well.
Yeah.
There's also the podcast, Shifting Our Schools. We do a free webinar every Thursday, 4 p.m. Seattle time here, that then is released as a podcast. So if you can't join us live, which is always awesome, about 300 educators join us live. And then it's released as a podcast. For your podcast listener, check out Shifting Our Schools. You'll get all of our free webinars, what we've been doing, and other stuff. So I'm out there.
Yeah,
Google Jeff Utecht, you'll find it.
Yeah, and we'll get it all linked. And I know, like the podcast, I can vouch for it. It's what I listen to in my morning walks. I know when you have the webinars and when they go live, it's always my perfect walk routine, and just
awesome.
So many wonderful things. So Jeff, this has been phenomenal. Thanks for helping get us going, getting us some new thinking points, and really working on how to get started. And obviously all the work you're doing for so many. It's a great opportunity for anybody that's part of this particular PD to dive into some further learning.
Love it.
If they find out this is really what I need, and that's what it's all about. So,
well, thank you for all the great work you're doing there too.
We're
all just doing the best we can to support as many as we can.
That's all we can do, right?
Yeah.
So, and just keep nudging and moving forward. So thank you again for all your time.
Yeah, no worries.